Good afternoon. I don't usually do a video at this time, but before I put my onions away, I thought I would just talk about them a little bit. A lot of you, not a lot, but several of you have commented on my onions, how big they are. And so I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about onions. First of all, I'm going to tell you during World War II, when the Japanese were gathered up and put into camps, one of them was near Ontario, Oregon. And that part of Oregon is the dry, it's the southeastern side, and it borders Idaho. And then on the other side of the Cascades is the nice green side. We lived on the green side. Actually, we lived pretty close to where Jim and Renda Wilson lived for 2 years, if you following their channel. And we lived there quite a few years. It was a nice place to live. But anyway, when the Japanese were put in these camps and they looked out on the Ontario soil and they thought about it, and they had a long time to think about it. It's a sad time in our history when that happened. But when it was over and they were free, they knew what they wanted to do with that soil, and they raised onions. And we used to live on that part of Idaho where we would go down past the fields near Ontario of onions. And when you live in that part of Idaho, you do a lot of shopping in Oregon because there's no sales tax in Oregon. And there's sales tax even on groceries in Idaho. I think it's sort of funny, at the end of the year you get this check from the state to compensate for the sales tax on the food. It seems to me it would be a lot cheaper if they just did it to start with. But anyway, out in there they grew the onions in these fields. And they do spray onions, regardless of what people think. At certain times of the year when we drove through there, we made sure that our car vents were all closed because of the herbicides that they sprayed through there. But I just wanted to tell you that when we had sheep, when we lived in Nampa, Idaho, and in the Crane Creek area, sheep love to eat onions. And every once in a while there would be a truck full of onions that they had to get rid of. And why they had to do that is because New York, the state of New York, probably New York City, had ordered onions, and they wanted large onions. And so they shipped them out, and they didn't meet the standards. So back they came, and we got them for our sheep. And I have never, if you think these are big, what came back to us, I'd never seen onions as big as those that were rejected. And they were wonderful. We ate them and the sheep ate them. But also I want to tell you, and I don't know, this is probably a Walla Walla sweet. Walla Walla is in Washington. And they're a very sweet, good onion. And this is a different variety. This is a little brown onion. But I want to tell you, and I learned this from my mother, when the, I don't know if you call them rings, but the little segments, and I'm sure the camera is not picking them up, and I don't know if it would pick them up if I got any closer either. But the wider they are apart, the sweeter the onion is going to be. The faster it grew, the juicier it is. Whereas this onion, if you could see it, the segments are here and here and here, whereas the segments on this are much further apart. And so this onion is going to be a hotter onion. And my mother was an onion expert. She ate onions with every meal. Fresh onions, cooked onions, onions. I never liked onions until I grew up, and then I do. I don't eat them raw like she does as much, although I do in salads. But she'd just chop them up. She'd have them with her eggs, her potatoes, whatever she was eating. And I'll tell you one other thing she had them with. And I wish now I'd been brave enough to try this. My brother did, and he liked it, so the two of them really liked it. They made a sandwich. I think they put mayonnaise on the bread. I'm not sure about that. Sliced up oranges and onions, and that was the sandwich. And they just loved it. I don't know. If any of you try it, let me know. I'm still, I guess, not brave enough to do it. But anyway, that's the lesson on onions, and she was an expert, so she would even look at the shapes. This shape is going to be sweeter than probably this shape because it's rounder, so the round is what you want. And then the segments, if you want a sweet onion or one that isn't quite oniony, then get the wider apart. It's grown faster, it's got more water content in it, and it's sweeter. So there you have your lesson for today on onions. And how can we cook without an onion? So surviving the 80s, good night, good evening.